second session of the night. So if you can find your seats, that would be wonderful. Awesome. So how many have learned something new tonight? Wow, that's awesome. That's great. You learned something new? Okay, so I've got a couple more books to give away, and I can't think of anything. Tim, you got anything? If you're wearing... Yeah, closest birthday to Tim. Whose birthday is nearby today? April 26th? That closer than you, Dad? All right, so come get your book. All right, if you are the head of a Christian school, I have a book for you. All right, I have a volunteer to run it to you. All right, let's do, if you are a youth leader, first one to raise your hand. Oh, Baron, of course. Yeah, you, first one. Hobble on up here. Here, do you want the Case for Life or Jehovah's Witness? Case for Life. All right. That's what we're talking about next, right? All right. All right, I got one more. First one to raise your hand. Who wants it? All right, Crystal. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. There you go. Okay, so we're about to talk, Tim's about to talk about the Case for Life. I wanted to put another plug in for Red Pen Logic, though. He talked a little bit about it, but his videos are incredible. They're about 3 minutes long. He plays whatever TikTok is going viral, and then he responds to it. They're awesome. I have a couple notes on my phone where I'm watching a movie or something, and I'm really starting to notice the ideas that are coming out, and I refute them on my phone just for my own benefit with the Bible. And Tim does this with the stuff that your kids are listening to. How many of you have kids? How many of you are kids? Okay, you need to be on Red Pen Logic. It's on YouTube, it's on TikTok, Twitter, it's everywhere. So go, that's as you like to say, it's your homework for tonight to go home and like and subscribe to Red Pen Logic. All right, Tim, you're up.
You feel good? I kind of want to apologize for all that information, but I also don't want to apologize for it, okay? But we're going to keep rolling here. Thank you for the plug for Red Pen Logic. Definitely check it out. We're going to be talking about the Case for Life here in a second, and those books by Scott Klusendorf are like kind of the book you want to read on the issue. That's really accessible. But actually, how Red Pen Logic really took off in the early days, this is going back 3 years ago. In fact, our 3rd year anniversary is today. We launched on my birthday 3 years ago. And it was responding to a lot of the pro-choice kind of rhetoric, arguments that were out there. And those particular graphics and videos went really, they went viral. So anyways, check out, if you're interested in this topic, I want you to definitely look at those videos. I will say this particular talk, out of all the ones we're going to cover, so tomorrow we're going to do the problem of evil. If God is all good, if God is all powerful, if God is all knowing, why is there evil in the world? That's Sunday morning, okay? So you want to be here for that. We're going to do the Q&A during Sunday school. Come with your toughest questions. And I'm not promising, I don't pretend to have all the answers. If I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know. But I'll do my best. And then we're going to look at the truth about truth, this idea of relativism in the culture, how do we respond to it, and then finally, tactics. But I'll tell you what, this particular topic, I think, is so important because it has real-world implications in saving lives. I think all this stuff does save, especially souls, but saving lives. I have had people reach out to me and say, Tim, I sent your video, or I used this argument with a friend of mine. They were going to have an abortion. Now they're not. Okay? That's a big deal. And I know that I'm not the only one who hears stories like that. Plenty of people have heard stories like this. So there's a lot on the line here when it comes to this particular issue. I want to start by asking you to imagine someone who's in a very cramped space. They're in pure darkness. It's hot. It's humid. This group of individuals is totally dependent on another individual for their survival. Someone who requires a long cord for their sustenance. Who am I talking about? I am not talking about the unborn. I'm actually talking about these 33 men. Do you guys know who these 33 men are? These are the Chilean miners back in 2010. Okay, so we're going back quite a ways. 2010, Thursday, August 5th, a terrible tragedy happened. There was an accident where a mine collapsed. There was over 700,000 tons of rock that collapsed in on these 33 men, trapping them over 2,000 feet below the surface of the earth. And they were trapped there for 69 days. 69 days. In that moment, the experience of these men became like the experience of preborn children. They were entirely dependent on other people for their survival. If no one came to their rescue, they were gone. They were goners. Much like birth, they actually had to travel through a long canal to get them out. You can actually watch this I'm sure if you looked on YouTube, you can see them pulling these men out in these, we'll just call it the Earth Canal instead of birth canal, okay? But instead of parents eagerly awaiting their unborn children, this was families, sons and daughters waiting there to be reunited with dads and brothers, this kind of thing. It's almost unimaginable for us to think that the world would abandon these 33 men all because they were dependent on others for their survival, or all because, they couldn't help anyone. It was going to cost a lot of money. In fact, they spent millions and millions of dollars to rescue these 33 men. No one needed to provide an argument. People just started going and rescuing these men. They jumped into action, okay? And it would be even more unimaginable to think, not just leaving them there, but actually maybe we send down some dynamite, and actively kill them. I mean, that sounds ludicrous. And yet I think there's a parallel going on here when it comes to the abortion issue that we'll get into. Let's start with some facts, though. When we look at Canada and the U.S., what we find out, and these are kind of like rounded numbers here, but there's around 100,000 abortions that take place in Canada every year. And when you do the math, that works out to be about 12 every hour. When you look at the U.S. population, there's over 1 million that take place every year. And again, when you do the math, it ends up being something like 1 abortion every 30 seconds, okay? Canada, 1 every 5 minutes. Now, don't think Canadians are any better. It's just that our population is so much smaller, okay? We actually have the same rate of abortions, okay? Because our population is about 35 million. Yours is over 300 million, all right? So very, very, very proportionate. Now, a lot of people don't understand that the pro-life position has an argument that we can put forward. It's not just, thus saith the Lord, and pull out your Bible. Okay? Certainly you could make a biblical argument. I'm actually not going to do that in this session. What I want to offer you is a very straightforward and compelling argument that you can use with anyone, and I've found this to be quite effective in talking with people who don't share my views when it comes to the abortion issue, okay? And it goes like this. Here's the moral logic of our view. Here's the moral logic. Premise 1, it is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being without proper justification. That's the moral claim, okay? Premise 2, elective abortion. I'm using the word elective in the sense that someone choosing to go and have an abortion, basically for any of the reasons that people normally give. It's not to save the mother's life. Those are typically called therapeutic or medical abortions, okay? Elective is like, there's nothing wrong with the mother biologically, and she could have a healthy pregnancy, but she's choosing to have an elective abortion. Elective abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being without proper justification. Then here's the conclusion. Now, the conclusion follows. When you look at an argument like this, it's like if these two premises are true, the conclusion follows. It follows logically, okay? You cannot escape it. And here's the conclusion. Elective abortion's wrong. Abortion's wrong. Now, here's the problem with an argument like this in our particular cultural moment, okay? When you hear abortion is wrong, I know what most people are thinking. They're not thinking what I'm thinking, they're thinking something else. I'm actually going to give a whole talk on this tomorrow afternoon. But here's what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh, Tim, you don't like abortion. And if you don't like one, don't have one. I mean, you've probably seen the bumper stickers, you've seen the t-shirts. If you don't like it, don't have one. But that's not the claim we're making. That relativizes my claim that abortion is wrong, okay? Moral relativism says there is no right and wrong. There is no good and evil. And our culture is swimming in the sea of relativism. And most of our students don't even realize it. It's like a fish not knowing they're wet, okay? Because that's just what they're used to. When you hear things like you do you, that is like the anthem of relativism, okay? And so I'm going to go into this more tomorrow. So I'm not going to go. So we're just going to leave that relativism idea aside for a minute. I want to read you something. Now this is going to be probably too small on the screen. Let me just read what this says. Here's a tweet, and this particular, not a tweet, it's an Instagram post, and it has over 280,000 likes. Here's what it says. If you don't have to love abortion. You can dislike it. Maybe it even makes you sad. The way you view abortion is up to you. If you don't like abortion, you can advocate for proper sex education, access to birth control, and other things that have been shown to lower unplanned pregnancies. You don't have to like, notice, I keep talking about likes, right? You don't have to like abortion. But what you can't do is disrespect somebody for having an abortion. You can't take away the choice from women because you don't like it. Your emotions are not somebody else's responsibility. Your emotions aren't more important than anyone else's bodily autonomy. You don't have to like abortion. That's like the fourth, fifth time, right? You don't have to like it. But you have to respect other people's rights, and that includes the right to have safe, accessible abortion. Now, what we do at Red Pen Logic is we red pen stuff. So how this idea started was I used to be a full-time teacher. And of course, we corrected students' work all the time with a red pen. And it wasn't because we were trying to be aggressive or anything. It's because we're just trying to correct, because we care. The fundamental flaw in this tweet, or in this meme, is that they're confusing morality, moral claims, with preference claims. A moral claim that says something's wrong with a preference claim that says, I don't like it. That happens constantly in this issue. You say abortion's wrong, they immediately say, if you don't like it, don't have it, okay? This is what's going on here. They're actually taking your claim, and which is an objective kind of claim, and they're making it a subjective ice cream claim. Again, tomorrow I want to go into all this in more detail, so I'm just going to kind of gloss over it. But it's kind of like the difference between someone saying slavery is wrong and I don't like slavery. Those are two different claims. And in the same way, when someone says abortion is wrong, that is a different kind of claim than I don't like abortion, okay? So I'm just going to skip over some of this because we're going to talk about this tomorrow. I want to start with this. There was a debate between Scott Klusendorf, who wrote that book, A Case for Life. He was debating the then president of Planned Parenthood. Her name is Anna Runkle. And Anna Runkle laid out her case, and here's what it looked like. She said, abortion is a private decision between a woman and her doctor. She said, making abortion illegal will force women into back alley, dangerous abortions. She said, women should have the right to choose. She said, after all, 90% are done in the first trimester. And then finally, she ended by saying something like, "What? And who are you to judge women who make these very difficult decisions?" Now, that was her case. And then Scott Klusendorf got up to debate Anna Runkle, and here's what Scott said. Scott said, here's the first words of his mouth, Anna Runkle is completely correct. Of course, all the pro-lifers in the audience, passed out at that moment. No, they didn't. She said, she's absolutely right. She's absolutely correct. He said, we shouldn't interfere with a woman and her doctor. We shouldn't force women into dangerous back alley abortions. We shouldn't take away a woman's right to choose. We shouldn't judge this difficult and complex decision that women labor over. Anna Runkle is absolutely right. If what? Well, this is the big if, okay? And this idea revolutionized my thinking on this. Well, what's the if? Here's an illustration. Imagine a 4-year-old comes up behind you as you're working. Maybe you're washing the dishes, maybe you're, working on the car, whatever. You're busy at work, and they say something like this, "Mommy, Daddy, can I kill this? Can I kill this?" Now, what question do you have to ask before you can answer the question? Yeah, what is it? What is it? Because if it's a spider, go ahead, smush it. If it's like the neighbor's cat, well, don't tell your mom. No. Maybe you got to talk to your kid about that. If it's like the neighbor, okay, hold on, this kind of thing. Before you can answer the question, can I kill this, you have to get the answer to the question, what is it? Right? What is it? Now, what's amazing about this, where I'm taking you, and what Scott Klusendorf has come up with, is that it brings this whole thing back to one question. What is it? What is the unborn? Okay? Anna Runkle's entire case is completely right if the unborn is not a human being. Right? I mean, if it's not a human being, go for it. Like an appendix, we take out appendix all the time. Fine. But if the unborn is a human being, well, that changes everything. So here's something that I've memorized. There are some things like you just kind of learn, but this is something I memorize so that when it comes up, I'm able to access it. If you can memorize your home address, you can memorize this. If the unborn is not human, no justification for abortion is necessary. If it's not human being, No justification for abortion is even necessary. Just go do it. If the unborn is a human being, then no justification for abortion is adequate. Okay? So these are our two things. The whole question, the entire debate over abortion comes down to one simple question. What is the unborn? Because we don't kill defenseless human beings for the reasons that most people will cite for abortion. The right to personal privacy, the right to choose, financial burden. We just don't want them. I have enough kids. They remind me of some traumatic event. We do not kill people for that. We don't. And so it comes down to this one question. There's a tactic, actually Scott and my boss, Greg Kokel, has come up with, called trotting out the toddler. And this is a way to figure out if the person you're talking to is someone who believes the unborn is a human being or not. Here's how it works. If they give you an argument for abortion, they give you an argument, I want you to first identify if the argument would identify the argument that's used to justify abortion. Then the second step is ask if that would justify killing a toddler. And if it wouldn't justify killing a toddler, then they're assuming the unborn is not a human being, like a toddler. I'll show you. Here's an example. Here's how it works. Trying out the toddler. Someone says, abortion is a private choice between a woman and her doctor. That was one of Anna Runkle's arguments. Here's what you do. You say, I have a 2-year-old in front of me, right? I have a 2-year-old in front of me. Should we allow her parents to abuse her if it's done in private? Of course, the person's going to say something like, that's not fair. Those children who are being abused in private, they're human beings. We can't do that. Then the issue isn't really about privacy. It's about what is the unborn. That's what it comes back to. Or how about this one? The pro-choicer says something like, but many poor women can't afford another child. I'm going to try out my toddler immediately. I have a 2-year-old in front of me, right? And it helps to kind of put your hand out. I got a 2-year-old right here. If she gets too expensive, her parents can't afford her, can we just kill her? Of course, the person's going to say no. Well, no. But then they might say, but aborting a fetus is not the same as killing a toddler. You got to say the part, okay? So once again, the question is, what is the unborn? It's not about finances, because you understand that that wouldn't justify killing the toddler. So obviously, when it comes to the unborn, they're assuming it's not a human. Or how about this one? Do you think women should be forced to bring an unwanted child into the world? Now, by the way, the child is already in the world. In the womb is in the world, okay? I'm just saying. They're already here. I have a 2-year-old in front of me. Is it okay for me to kill him if he's unwanted? I mean, that's the argument is unwanted. Okay, 2-year-old, unwanted. They're going to say, well, wait, no, of course not. That's not the same thing. And I'm going to say, well, that's the issue, isn't it? Are they the same thing? They're assuming they're not. And I'm going to show you the case that they are. Okay? They're assuming they're not. A toddler and the unborn are not the same thing on their view. That's where they go wrong. Because science and philosophy show that they are the same. They are both human beings equally valuable. Now, I want you to listen to, again, we're going to try out the toddler here. This was a number of years ago. Here's Obama. Now, he was, I think, running for president at this time. He's talking with Rick Warren. This video went viral. I want you to show how he makes his argument, and then I want you to show you how easy it is to respond to this. So here's what he says.
Let me just speak more generally about the issue of abortion, because this is something obviously the country wrestles with. One thing that I'm absolutely convinced of is that there is a moral and ethical element to this issue. And so I think anybody who tries to deny the moral difficulties and gravity of the abortion issue, I think, is not paying attention. So that'd be point number one. But point number two, I am pro-choice. I believe in Roe versus Wade, and I come to that conclusion not because I'm pro-abortion, but because ultimately I don't think women make these decisions casually. I think they wrestle with these things in profound ways, in consultation with their pastors or their spouses or their doctors and their family members.
Okay, so here's the argument. He says, I am pro-choice, and I come to that conclusion. Why? Because ultimately I don't think women make these decisions casually. I think they wrestle with these things in profound ways. So that's the argument. The argument is they wrestle with it. They're not making these things flippantly. Now, that's actually not true. You can go online and watch sick videos where you have people, young girls, who basically are flaunting the fact. They're shouting their abortion, okay? Like, oh, I'm on my 5th abortion. Like it's some kind of like I'm collecting, stamps at Subway or something, So it is casual. Now, so that does exist, but the point is, notice what he's saying. Ultimately, I don't think women make these decisions casually, as if that's the argument. Okay, I got a 2-year-old in front of me. That's what Rick Warren should have said. I have a 2-year-old in front of me. And let's say the person says, man, I'm not going to make this decision casually, but I'm going to kill this 2-year-old. Does that make it okay? No. Obama there is assuming the unborn is not a human being. His entire argument, his entire rationale is riding on the fact that the unborn is not human. But that's what he assumes. There was a woman, this isn't, by the way, just hypothetical. I got a 2-year-old in front of me, not just hypothetical. There's Susan Smith. Susan Smith buckled her 3-year-old son, Michael, and 14-month-old Alexander, son, into her car, drove it until they fell asleep, and once asleep, she drove it into a lake, drowning her 2 kids. And she actually said, she really struggled with this. This was not a decision she made casually, but there was a man that she was dating who didn't want kids. And so she thought, I'll solve the problem by killing my kids. Does anyone think so I got a 2-year-old in front of me. Obviously, this is deeply wrong. This is horrific. But notice Obama's entire argument, and some people are probably listening to him saying that, and they're like, wow, that's so good. The reason it can sound persuasive is because they're not imagining Michael or Alexander. They're imagining an unborn baby who they are treating as not human. That's the only way this works. So when people bring up all these things, personal privacy, economic hardship, this is such a morally complex issue, unwanted children, you're forcing your morality, all these kinds of arguments can all disappear. They evaporate when we start talking about the one thing that really matters, and that is what is the unborn. So your job, if you are pro-life, is to bring the conversation to that one question. What is the unborn? Now, let's get back to the moral logic of our view. It's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Elective abortion intentionally kills a human being. Therefore, elective abortion is wrong. Now, without proper justification, this is more philosophical. You could put self-defense in there. It may be appropriate to kill in self-defense, but I'm not going to get into that stuff here, okay? Let's just look at these arguments as is and see where we go. This is the one that gets attacked first, the factual claim. Elective abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being without proper justification. It's a fact that gets challenged, okay? Now, the way it gets challenged is they'll say, well, it's not human. Or they'll say, like Obama did that night, he was asked about this, and here's what he said in response.
Okay, now, let's deal with abortion. 40 million abortions since Roe v. Wade. You know, as a pastor, I have to deal with this all the time. All of the pain and all of the conflicts. I know this is a very complex issue. 40 million abortions. At what point does a baby get human rights, in your view?
Well, you know, I think that whether you're looking at it from a theological perspective or a scientific perspective, answering that question with specificity, you know, is above my pay grade.
So, this is actually a very common retort. When we're talking about is it human or not, they'll say, I don't know. That's what he's saying. When he says above my pay grade, he's saying, I don't know. Now, I want to show you that that's actually an argument for the pro-life position to start. If you're hunting and you see the bushes moving and you don't see your buddy around, like I don't know where he went, bushes are moving, do you just shoot into the bushes? Of course not. If you don't know, you don't proceed. You don't pull the trigger. Because if you could possibly be killing a human being, you don't do it. Or if you're going to detonate a building, we go to a building and we got all the charges set, we're going to demolish the building, and the foreman says, okay, is it all clear? Is there anyone in the building? And we say, I don't know. Do you still push the button? Of course not. If you don't know, you don't proceed. The whole I don't know, it's above my pay grade, and I wish Rick Warren would have known this stuff, he could have said, Obama, that is not an argument for the pro-choice position. That's a pro-life argument to say, I don't know. Now, it turns out we do know, okay? It turns out we do know. Okay, so anyways, we skip past this. Okay, here's why we do know what the unborn is. First, the unborn is alive. Sometimes that gets challenged, and it's just not true. A living egg and a living sperm come together to create the first cell, which is a living zygote. There is no point of non-life biologically speaking. So when people talk about, well, we just don't know when life begins. Yeah, we do. It is nonsense when people say, I could quote you textbook after textbook. In fact, I'll show you a couple in here. The criteria of life: growing biologically, potential to reproduce, uses energy, made of cells, reacts. This is like elementary school biology here, okay? This is not complicated. So it fits the criteria of life. The unborn is killed, therefore must have been living. That's the whole point. You can only kill an organism that was once a living organism. That's the whole point. It's growing. That's why they have abortions. Okay, so it's alive. The second thing is it's a separate individual being. This is where oftentimes people say, well, you shouldn't force a woman to do something with her body she doesn't want to do, or a woman should have the right to do whatever she wants with her own body. The problem with that slogan is it's not true. Men and women can't do whatever they want with their own bodies. I can't walk through a crowded room swinging my arms with my body, right? My rights stop where your nose starts, right? That kind of thing. It's like when I'm using my liberties and they end up hurting someone else, well, all of a sudden we start crying foul. You're not allowed to do that. The second thing is that the unborn is not the mother's body. So one is the claim is just not true. Second is it's not the mother's body, okay? So I can't drive the wrong way down the highway with my body. You guys know that. I can't take my body, lock my kids in a cage, and then go to Florida for a week, leaving them there. No, I can't do that. But I also know that it's not the mother's body. How do we know? Different gender, 50% of the time. Unique blood type, often. Different central nervous system, different heart, different brain. It has its own genetic fingerprint. The DNA that is in the unborn's body, in every single cell of their body, and the DNA in a mother's body are not the same DNA. Okay? It is a different being. It's a different body. Okay? So they have that special genetic signature, which should tip us off. Not only do they have a genetic signature that's different, they have this, or genetic fingerprint, they have this genetic signature that is human. We know from DNA the difference between a human DNA and a cow DNA and a pig DNA and a dog DNA. We know the difference. And so when we look at a certain genome, we can say, hey, that's a human genome. When those CSI scientists show up at a crime scene and they find a hair, they can tell you whether it's a human hair or some kind of other hair. And so science is on the pro-lifer side here. Not only that, but it is a human being. So it's alive. It's a separate, distinct being. It's also a human being. How do we know? Because of DNA and because of the law of biogenesis that says life begets the same kind of life. Things reproduce after their kind. Dogs produce puppies, right? And humans produce humans. Again, this isn't really hard. Peter Singer, who is pro-choice and is really consistent about his views. He's a Princeton philosopher, ethicist. He actually argues in his book Practical Ethics that we should be able to kill newborns up to a certain age. Here's his reasoning. He says that you are not a valuable person until you are self-aware. Anyone in this room who has seen a newborn baby knows a newborn baby is not self-aware. Well, when does it become self-aware? I'm not sure my 7-year-old is self-aware. You know what I'm saying? When does that happen? Well, I'll tell you what, there are weeks and probably months before our newborns become self-aware. And so for consistency's sake, he says, it's not just that when they exit the womb that they become valuable. The birth canal is not this magical canal that gives value, okay? And so for him, he says, I'm going to be consistent, self-awareness. So, yeah, give parents the option. He also argues, by the way, that chimpanzees are more self-aware than some developmentally handicapped people, and so should have more value. Again, consistent, but really, really horrific. Now, here is what he says in his book. He says, it is possible to give human being a precise meaning. We can use it as equivalent to member of the species Homo sapiens. Whether a being is a member of a given species is something that can be determined scientifically by an examination of the nature of the chromosomes in the cells of living organisms. In this sense, there is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from a human sperm and eggs is a human being. That is, I disagree with this guy on a lot of things, but that is right on the money. What's he saying? He's saying, look at the DNA. What's the genetic signature? Human. Who are the parents? Oh, they're human? Guess what? Humans make more humans. I'm not going too quickly for you guys, right? Okay. So, but again, this is not like you watch CNN, you watch some of these things that we've responded to, and it's like, I don't know when life begins. Come on. Like, come on. Here's the developing human, a textbook. Human development begins at fertilization. That's when it begins. Or it goes on in the same textbook. A zygote is the beginning of a new human being. You want to know when life starts? Read a textbook. How about this one? Development begins at fertilization. The process by which a male gamete, the sperm, and the female gamete, the oocyte, unite and give rise to a zygote. Goes on to say the same thing before we are born. Beginning of a new human being is when they come together. There's tons of textbooks out there we could quote, like just textbook after textbook. This is not a question in the scientific literature. It just isn't. When you hear someone say, we don't know when life begins, they are not telling the truth. We know when life begins. Now, here's what happens. This is a slippery move. We know when human life begins. And so, premise 2, elective abortion intentionally kills a human being, that's true. So what do? They attack the first premise. When the second premise doesn't work, you can't attack it because it's a fact of science, they move back to the first one. It's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent, and here's where they change the language. Okay, Tim, they're human beings, but you can kill a human being, you can't kill a human person. So now they're going to use personhood language and human being language, and these are now distinct. They've now teased them apart. And you can kill a human being, but you can't kill a human person. This is getting very dangerous, okay? On their view, the unborn may be a human, but it is not a person. In their world, there's 2 categories. There's human non-persons and there's human persons. Human non-persons you can kill, human persons you cannot kill. Now let me tell you something. We have been here before. We've been here before. Where we knew that there were humans that you could not kill, and then they arbitrarily assigned certain individuals, and they said, they're human but not persons. And if you're not a person, guess what? You don't have rights. A right to life. A right to freedom. We have been here over and over again. And what we have, I think, come to realize over time is this category of human non-persons does not exist. During Nazi Germany, you know what they referred to the Jews as? Life unworthy of life. Human, not persons. Life unworthy of life. And they're doing the exact same thing with the unborn. They're trying to be, it's just clever. And most people aren't seeing it because they don't see the move. They don't recognize it. They haven't been taught, oh, this is a personhood thing. They've defined arbitrarily a list of attributes that a person must have. And if you don't have those attributes, you don't have a right to life. So what do we do? Well, what I want to show is that there is no such thing as a human non-person. Doesn't exist. Humans are valuable in and of themselves. Forget this personhood language, okay? So what is the difference between a human and a person? Well, what they'll say is the unborn and the newborn are different in 4 ways. It's called the SLED test, okay? Size, level of development, environment, degree of dependency. SLED. Size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. Here's how it works. Let's look at size first. The unborn are smaller than newborns, than you or I. But does size give you your value? No, of course not. Did you guys know that generally speaking, men are stronger and bigger than women? Does that mean that men are more valuable than women? The answer is no. You know that when we just look out at the differences in size of human beings that are born, there's all kinds of variety. Does an NBA player have more value than a person who's really short? Of course not. Of course not. Your size has no bearing on your value. Whether you are, 200-pound man or you are a single cell zygote, okay? Size, yeah, they're different sizes. Everyone can see that. But your size does not give you your value. By the way, size transcends value, but so does even what we perceive humans to what they should look like. Have you guys heard of Nick Vujicic? He's got a ministry called Life Without Limbs. No arms, no legs. And yet he is a valuable human being. Sure, he doesn't look like most people. You have Stephen Hawking, brilliant, right? Scientist, and yet severely disabled. Does his disability mean he's not valuable? Of course not. You have stories like the Elephant Man, or so-called. You have, Down syndrome, whatever. These are fully valuable human. Your value isn't on some scale to do with your physical appearance. That's not how value works. Okay, so forget about value. I know they'll say they're smaller. That doesn't mean they're less valuable. Second of all, well, they'll say, Tim, they're less developed. They're less developed. And it's true. The unborn are less developed, okay? If you've ever seen the unborn in an ultrasound or whatever, you'll see that they are less developed. They're certainly not self-aware like you and I are. Okay, true enough. But someone who's in a reversible coma is also not self-aware. Did you know you're not even self-aware when you sleep? Uh-oh. That creates a problem. Wait, do you become a non-person during your sleep? Well, that gets real dangerous, right? And so you have this. What about when you go through dementia? Does that mean you lose your value? So what we're doing, by the way, this is called a reductio ad absurdum in logic, which just means we're taking the view that says level of development, that's what gives you your value. And I'm just saying, okay, you want self-awareness? Let's take that for a test drive and see where it takes us. You don't want that. You get rid of newborns. Newborns aren't persons anymore. You get rid of people who are in comas. When you're sleeping, people with dementia, all these people lose their value. You don't want that, okay? Level of development doesn't work. How about environment? Does where you are determine who you are? The answer is no. This is actually my wife, and that is that's our second born, Jocelyn. And those pictures are taken within hours of each other, okay? And in some places, they will say, well, Jocelyn in one of those pictures has no value because she is in the womb. And outside the womb, she now has all the rights and all the value that you or I have. How does that make any sense? How does changing your location give you value? We've been here before too. You guys heard of the Mason-Dixon line? You remember that? If you were born on one side of that line and you were black, you could be enslaved, no rights. On the other end of the line, other side, couldn't be. Does that make any sense? The arbitrary location? Of course not. This is completely arbitrary and ridiculous. In the same way, we're doing the same thing. We're saying that somehow this trip of 8 inches down the birth canal somehow transforms a non-valuable non-person into a valuable person. No, it doesn't make sense. The last one is degree of dependency. Degree of dependency. it is definitely true that the unborn is absolutely, by the way, these pictures I found on, it's like do's and don'ts of parenting. But did you know there's lots of people who are really dependent for their survival on other people or machines? Like if you need dialysis, you are totally dependent. If you need insulin, you're dependent. I think about these conjoined twins. Literally, they are absolutely dependent on each other for their survival because they are connected. Does that mean they're not valuable anymore because of that dependence? Of course not. Again, taking the view for a test drive, and we see you can't exclude people from being valuable based on being dependent. By the way, all of these differences boil down to one thing: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. If you want to talk about discrimination, let's talk about age discrimination. Why are they so small? Because that's the size of a human when they're like developing in the womb. Why are they so underdeveloped compared to you or I? Because of their age. Why are they in that environment? Because that's where unborn babies are, right? They're in the womb. That's where they live. And finally, dependency. They're all related to age. And so what I would want to say is there is no significant moral difference between the unborn that you once were and the person that you are today. There is no morally relevant difference that would allow me to kill you back then, but not today. And so this category is empty. It should be empty. And in fact, let's just get rid of it altogether. There are just humans. And if you're a member of the human species, then you are valuable. And by the way, this is the inclusive view. I know that's like the buzzword, right? Inclusivity. You want to talk about the most inclusive view? It is that every single human being is equally valuable across the board, okay? And by the way, we ground that in the image of God. It's not arbitrary. If there's no God, it becomes arbitrary. But because God is the one that makes us, he gives us our value. It's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Elective abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, it is wrong. And if it's wrong, we shouldn't do it. If it's wrong, we shouldn't do it. Here's the last thing I'll say, and then we'll take a couple questions. When it comes to this issue, you can give all the arguments in the world, and some are going to fall on deaf ears, okay? Some are actually going to there's going to be some fruit that comes from it. I've seen it. Here's what I want to challenge you to do, besides just giving arguments, is I want you to consider praying for some things. I want you to consider praying that God would actually put it on your heart to pray for the unborn. They're a group of humanity that we need to be thinking about more and praying about more. Second, pray that God will put in place lawmakers who value life and will create laws that are morally just. We should want to live in a just society, and we should pray that happens. Pray for those who are on the front lines working at crisis pregnancy centers. I was just talking with someone yesterday. Actually, I was walking through the mall doing some shopping for my wife's birthday. Her birthday's right the day before mine. It was yesterday. And so I took her shopping. And we ran into someone who actually was a fan of Red Pen Logic at the mall. And she told me she works at a crisis pregnancy center. And we need to be praying because they see people struggling with this question. Should I keep my baby? Shouldn't? And they need our support. Pray for women who have chosen to keep their children because it's going to be hard. Some of these women really struggle afterward, and we need to be praying and helping them financially and using our resources best we can to do that. Pray for women who have chosen to have an abortion because a lot of these women think that's a solution, and yet they live with the regret often decades later It is heartbreaking. I have met many women who have had abortions, and they are absolutely heartbroken, and felt pressured at a time in a season, thought that was the right decision, and 10, 20 years down the road, they still think about when the birthday was going to be and what that child of theirs would have grown up to be. And so pray for those who have gone through this. Pray for women when you're talking with people. Pray for wisdom when you're talking with people about this issue. Try to keep yourself focused on the one question that matters. What is the unborn? Pray for compassion as well. And then finally, courage for pastors to proclaim the truth about this issue. It's really cool that we're here tonight doing this in a church, because there's lots of churches that won't touch this. I will never, well, maybe never is a strong word, but I don't see it ever happening where I get invited to a Canadian church. I live in Toronto or near Toronto. I don't think I'll get invited to speak at any Canadian church to speak on this issue. Canada is one of 3 countries in the world that has absolutely no law on abortion whatsoever. China, North Korea, and Canada. Yeah. No, anytime someone brings up a law, any kind of like restriction whatsoever to regulate any part of it, okay? Like even like use clean instruments, like anything. And it's like, oh, here come the pro-lifers, and it gets shot down like right away. So I think it's great that we're having this discussion in a church. So let me pray, and then we're going to take maybe a couple questions. Father, this is a really hard topic because it's not just an idea or a philosophy or an issue that's out there, but it's like something that could be something that we have struggled with or wrestled with within some of our homes. We may know people who have gone through an abortion. And God, I pray that if there's someone in this room who has been impacted by that, that they would know that you are a God who forgives, you're a God of grace, you're a God of love. And so I pray that they would feel that love even tonight. But I also would pray that there would be people in this room who would courageously and boldly stand with confidence and push back against a culture of death that wants to see more unborn babies killed this year. And that we would plant our feet and push back hard against this, because we are defending human lives. We ask that you would give us wisdom and compassion as we do that. Thank you for this evening. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so what time did we say we're going to go till? So it's almost 9, and I don't want to keep you here all night, but we'll take a few questions if you have some.
Thanks, Steve. And, hey, great job. That was really good.
Thanks.
I have a friend who worked in an abortion clinic for years.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what changed, but the person quit working in the abortion clinic and has been fighting severe depression and been in healthcare and whatnot ever since. Are there any statistics? I mean, I know women who have had abortion go through quite often go through. How about the workers at these places?
I don't know of the statistics on that issue. I know that there have been different workers like Abby Johnson, like outspoken, who used to work at Planned Parenthood and or other abortion clinics that have come out and said, here's what's going on, and here's how this impacted me, and I've totally done a 180 on my view, changed my view. So, but I can't give you the stats. I do know that a lot of people have it in their mind, like you go get an abortion and then we're done. But there's a trauma that, especially with women, but I think that I think in these clinics as well, some of the workers, I actually think some of these workers, like the abortionists themselves, there's a depravity that's going on there that is like where their moral conscience has been so seared again, I'm just kind of speaking anecdotally. I'm just like, but I think this lines up with what Scripture says. And they are just so hard. There's almost like, I mean, there's some videos that have been shared online. Pro-lifers get their cameras out, and they're outside, and the abortionist comes over, and it's like they're demon possessed. Now, I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying the way they're behaving is not normal. It's really disturbing in how they respond, as if they're like, there's something going on there. So, and that to me makes sense. You are taking human life over and over and over again. This is like Moloch stuff, from the Old Testament. Tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about the Canaanites in the Q&A. When God judged the Canaanites, by the way, it wasn't genocide, it was judgment. And when he did judge them, after 40 years, he stayed his hand. I think actually that whole judgment situation, people don't realize there's a patience going on there. Those people were sacrificing their kids, burning them, up to 14 months. 4 years old is what some of the historical data says outside the Bible. They were like searing their kids on burning hot hands of Moloch statues. Okay, these were depraved people. How does that happen? And of course, we see it like in the 20th century with what happened in Auschwitz and other places. Otherwise, normal people doing absolutely atrocious things. Like these are people like cooking people in these ovens and yet going home for dinner and having dinner around the table. There is something in the hardness of a heart and depravity that becomes so blind to the person they can't even see it anymore. So I think that's probably what's going on with these people. Yeah.
Do you have a figure on the percentage of women who go through abortions that become infertile?
Oh. I don't have a specific figure, but I know there has, again, this isn't, there's been some kind of correlation between that. I don't know if you could say there's a causation, if there's been a study on that. But I certainly have read that there is a connection. Maybe there's more going on, but yeah, there's all these side effects that people don't talk about, right? It's like you just go in and you get this procedure and you're good. And it's just not true. There is lasting psychological damage that we've just talked about, but there can be physical scars that just do not heal. And some of those end up being in the having to do with infertility. At the same time, I mean, there's some stories about some women who have had like multiple abortions, so they were still fertile, obviously.
Yes, I was wondering about, I know that life begins when the sperm and egg meet.
Yeah.
But many times that sperm and egg passes through the woman.
Yeah, that's right.
And so is that a soul in heaven?
A good question. I would say that, yeah, there is some debate over, okay, so sperm and egg come together and there's different stages in how that works. When does like life start? And some on the other side, the pro-choice side, have said, look, if we don't know the exact time, then we can't say. Well, there's one philosopher who called this the fallacy of the beard. Just because I don't know exactly when stubble turns into a beard doesn't mean I can't recognize when someone's actually got a beard on their face. You know what I'm saying? So you don't need to know the precise moment. But your question has to do with, say, a miscarriage. You have sperm and egg unite, and so now you don't have a fertilized egg. That's actually, I think, that's outdated terminology. What you have is a zygote. You don't have an egg. You don't have a sperm. You have a new creation. And so that is a new human being. And I would say that, yeah, there is a sense in which just like a newborn has a soul, and an 8-month-old has a soul, and a 7-month, I would go all the way back to a zygote having a soul. So every miscarried baby, I think, is in the arms of Jesus. Now, how that works out Again, like I have so many questions about that. Like, okay, so like when they are in heaven, do they grow? Like, is there like a growing process? Is there like does God just say, you know what, let's just skip all that. You're 20. You know, Adam and Eve, like there you are. You know, that kind of thing. Again, we don't know about that. There's a lot of unanswered. There's a lot of question marks. But on my view, that is a full human being made in the image of God. Even they're a God imager at the zygote stage. And therefore, when a baby dies, I consider that a baby that goes to be with the Lord.
Well, I was just thinking, not even, the woman may not even know.
Yeah.
It just passed, like.
That's right.
And she gets her next cycle.
Yeah.
So it's never even seen as a miscarriage. And I
That's
always
right.
wonder, you know, perhaps we have children in heaven we don't know about.
Sure. I think that's totally possible. And they were, and here's the thing, like, even though we didn't maybe mourn them, we didn't name them, we didn't, you know, we didn't even realize. God knows, right? So that's, I mean, to me, that's what matters. There are babies born that are nameless and unwanted and all kinds in other parts of the world and just like thrown away like trash. Okay, but God knows them. So yeah, I think it's totally possible. I know that we have at least one baby that's not here with us that we'll meet one day. And I'm thinking that's probably a boy, you know? I mean, we just don't know. But my suspicion is there was a boy. And so, you know, we're gonna get to hang out one day.
Thank you. Excellent talk.
Thank you.
I did have a question.
Sure.
I notice a lot of your arguments, in
Yeah.
fact, I think all of them, like traditional pro-life arguments, are based on the assumption that the person that you're speaking to is going to agree that human life is valuable.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
Yeah.
well, I think you know where I'm going with this.
I do. Yeah, so that's a really good observation. Thank you. And just to drive home that point, I responded to this tweet from Mr. Beast. So the most famous YouTuber right now, he goes under Mr. Beast, and he has like 150 million subscribers, like just unreal, okay? He put out on Twitter, because he likes to offer people money. That's his big thing. He gives money away. You watch one of his videos, it's like, I'm going to give away a Lamborghini. I'm going to give away this house. I'm going to give away, and it always got briefcases of $10,000. Well, in his tweet, he asked the question, how many of you would take $10,000 as a gift, but it resulted in someone you didn't know being killed? And it was a survey, a poll, and overwhelming, I forget 70%, something like that, said that they would take the money, 10 grand. So I made a video kind of just highlighting. People say, oh, generally people are good. No, generally people are hitmen, according to this survey, because they're willing to take money and someone dies as a result. The majority of people are hitmen. And this shows the value of human life. $10,000? You can't even get a car. You can't even get 5 iPhones for $10,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're talking about, I know it's a lot of money to some people, but this is like nothing. It's not even like he said $1 million. He said 10,000. People don't, so what do? This is a hard one because I think you find it could be very difficult to convince someone that life is valuable. One way you could try, though, is to ask them, is to make it personal. Ask them, say, if this happened to me with the morality question. I was with a student at a Catholic school. I was doing a guest lecture thing, talking about evil, and they came up to me and said, I don't believe in evil. There is no right and wrong. There is no good and evil. I said, okay, someone breaks into your house and they hurt you got a sister? He's like, yeah, I got a sister. They hurt your sister. You got a mom? Yeah, I got them. They hurt your mom. And I said, is that wrong? All of a sudden, this guy was like, this is awkward, right? He knew it was wrong. He was playing games with me. He was playing games. He said, because he knew, and I asked him, I asked him this question, and I wrote about this. I said, you realize that if you say there's good and evil, that must mean there's a moral law, and if there's a moral law, there's a moral lawgiver. And he said, yeah, that's right. So rather than believe in a moral lawgiver, he was going to throw the moral law out, but it really hit home when I asked him about his sister getting hurt or his mom. So it may be something similar. Someone doesn't believe that humans are valuable. Say, do you believe your sister's valuable? Do you believe your mom's valuable? Do you believe your dad's valuable? So now I'm asking personal questions. Oh, really? They're not valuable. So we can do whatever we want with them? No, I think when push comes to shove, most people, when it's their own flesh and blood, will say, see, that's the thing about Mr. Beast's tweet. Mr. Beast said, if it's someone you didn't know, would you take the 10,000? Okay, so I take the 10,000 and just some rando dies? No problem. That's what they were saying. What if I wonder what would have happened if he said someone in your family dies. You think they're taking 10 grand? No, because now it becomes personal. So there's something about, some worldviews are unlivable, and I think that these guys who say there's no right and wrong, it's an unlivable worldview. They'll say it with their mouth, but when it comes to talking about their family, oh, there's things, cut in front of them in line. You know, you're going to like McDonald's, just cut in front. All of a sudden, they're moral objectivists. You know, they're not relativists. You just broke some standard of the universe that says thou shalt not cut someone in line. And in the same way, I think you can use that with value. But you're absolutely right. There is a sense in which these arguments trade on logic. Someone actually, understands that logic's a thing. They understand that humans are valuable. If you don't believe humans are valuable, then why not kill anybody? But that person doesn't need a psychological argument, a philosophical argument. They need psychological help, right? That's the difference. So that's good. Here's the thing. Some people you won't be able to reach, right? And that's something we all have to realize. When I'm going to talk to some people, my expectation is always, I just want to put a stone in your shoe. That's my goal. Talk about that tomorrow, last session. If you think, man, I got to convert this pro-choicer to a pro-lifer, you are going to give up so easily because it just doesn't happen, usually in one sitting or something. When people do change their mind, it usually takes a long time, and they're wrestling and all that stuff. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. It'd be really cool if, you could show slides like this to our Maryland legislators, and they change their mind. But
yeah,
that kind of stuff doesn't seem to work. So my question is, in order to defeat that, is there, for example, lessons learned as a society we have, how we defeated the slavery issue over 150 years ago, that we can apply today, another huge moral issue at stake here?
I think that is the comparison. The comparison can help people awaken their moral conscience, right? When they see things when you make a comparison to slavery. By the way, for slavery, it was an argument based on skin tone, right? And so they responded by saying, look, as soon as you find someone who's got lighter skin than you, then you can enslave them. You know what I'm saying? So they were doing the same kind of reductio. But I'll tell you one thing that's really effective that I didn't do here tonight, and that's to show graphic images. There is one thing more powerful than any syllogism you will ever see, and that is when you see graphic images of aborted babies. I'll tell you what, that for me was the thing that launched me into making a presentation. I'm not sure why. Someone either sent it to me or this was years ago. And I watched a maybe minute and a half video about abortion and the aftermath. And of course, I was reduced to a puddle of tears. Like, I was like rocked that this was a thing. And then immediately started reading up Case for Life. How do I do something? How do I make a difference? It's not, again, it's not just an idea, something out there. Let's convince people that, 2 + 2 = 4 or something. It's just like, let's show, and by the way, this works all the time. People, when you buy a package of cigarettes, at least in Canada, there's a black lung on it, right? And when I worked there's a place called Zellers. It's kind of like Target. Okay, it was a Canadian version. As a 14-year-old kid, and they'd put me in like the first cashier spot. I wasn't a stock clerk. Look at me, I was a cashier. So then I would like had the cigarettes behind me, and people would ask, and they would always want me to pass it to them with the nasty picture down. They didn't want to see it, right? But our government slapped on everything. When you watch the Humane Society, do you guys have? Is it called the Humane Society? Where it's like Sarah McLachlan singing "I Will Remember You," right? And they show a dog with 3 legs. And they show why? Because seeing the thing changes. I could tell you dogs and cats need to be adopted, or I could show you some dogs and cats that need adoption. So these kinds of, and then of course, think about the Holocaust. We need people walking through Auschwitz. We need in our schools people talking about this so we don't repeat history, right? So this is a standard means of moral education, is to show these things and what happened. And I think that we need to be using graphic images when we can. I didn't, there's kids here and stuff, so you've got to kind of prep for all that stuff. But that's the kind of thing that I think should happen. And that's the kind of thing that can launch someone, change your mind, and like, I need to do something about this. And I'll tell you what, whenever you watch a pro-life TikTok or YouTube video of me, just know that's how it started. It wasn't an argument. It was, I saw something and I said, this is so disturbing. I'm not going to be the guy who never did anything about this. So started talking about it. There you go. Okay, you think, again, I know you got service in the morning. You guys can't be late for church because, so thank you for coming. Tomorrow, we're going to go into some really fun stuff. Truth, tactics, those are great topics. And then, of course, the problem of evil is a really hard question that we're going to tackle in tomorrow morning service. All right, thank you guys for coming. Good night.